Presenting to your attention a very impressive collection of retro photos of criminals from long ago. Most of the photos were taken in the USA and Australia between 1920 and 1928, just after the criminals were charged. Walter Smith was a gangster, a menace of the streets. Didn't like guns, killed people with his bare hands, neatly snapping their heads off. A note in the criminal case file says, "Very dangerous, has pronounced sadistic tendencies, can bite, no sense of fear, put in solitary confinement." Murray was a burglar, a home invader. He spent all his loot on booze and prostitutes. Never got rich out of his weaknesses. Mr. Skookerman ran securities scams and port fraud. Worked for the Mafia. A home invader. He stole and, if necessary, killed landlords. A note in the criminal case file says, "Very cunning, dexterous, likes to pretend to be mentally ill for the effect of pity." Debt bouncers from businessmen and Mafia debtors. They were in the business of seizing money. A note in the criminal case file says, "Very dangerous, gift of persuasion and severe psychological pressure." Gracie and Dalton were Los Angeles gangsters, among the elite of the American Mafia. Sidney Kelly is a gangster from Los Angeles. He's worked for the mob in other states. He has a record of contract killings, armed assaults, pimping and drug trafficking. Faith Rill is a juvenile thief, a burglar. He was 16 years old at the time of his arrest. Pictured left, 20 years old. His record includes home and shoplifting, pickpocketing and rape. A note in the criminal record says, "Particularly dangerous, agile, cunning, prone to escape and panic." Pictured right, Little Schmidt is a street kid, a thief. He worked for the Mafia and was a courier for valuable notes. When caught by the police, he instantly ate valuable notes with instructions. Mr. Ross is a mob lawyer nicknamed Old Man. For a long time he did not want to testify against members of a large group of gangsters from Los Angeles. After testifying, all of his family members were found dead downtown in their home. A month afterward was strangled by a cellmate. Fitch is a hardcore car thief from Chicago. Worked for the mob. Names unknown. Gangsters from Chicago. Main feature, killed everyone without leaving any witnesses. Prostitute thief. Sedated her clients with alcohol, emptied their pockets. Worked for the Mafia, handing over the most valuable and talkative clients to the criminals. A group of gangsters from Chicago. Covered up for John Dillinger's gang on more than one occasion. They ran labor unions and gambling. Held prostitutes, engaged in armed robberies, businessmen and drug dealers. The two on the right are two brothers famous for butchering a police informant with meat hooks, then hanging him on a downtown street with a sign on his chest that reads, "He talked a lot and all to the wrong people." A note in the criminal complaint says, "Very dangerous and ruthless, despite being courteous and intelligent." Prostitutes are Mafia tipsters. They met rich clients in restaurants. Their romances ended in bloody massacres with the theft of all the contents of their lovers' apartments. Prostitute thief. Sedated her clients with alcohol, emptied their pockets. Worked for the Mafia, handing over the most valuable and talkative clients to the criminals. Mr. Singh is a mercenary and a generalist. He worked for the Mafia, skillfully eliminating competitors, police officers and officials. Mafia members who controlled parts of New York City. Responsible for labor unions, alcohol and tobacco supplies. Murder and armed raids were their regular trade. Stanley Moore is a hardened gangster from Chicago, nicknamed the Inquisitor. He was responsible for the execution of debtors and people who stood in the way of the Mafia. In the photo on the left, Ellis is an authority in a gang of Chicago gangsters, a favorite of women. He organized crimes, incited his accomplices, and had complete control over the sharing of the loot. In the note of the criminal case said, particularly cruel and dangerous. In the photo on the right, Smith, Bone Hand, the leader of a gang of Chicago gangsters, and his assistant Jones. They were involved in running brothels, gambling, drugs, robbing collectors and killing rich Americans for profit. A note in the criminal complaint says, possess the gift of fear induction, very dangerous, will kill without hesitation. Pictured left, Mrs. Turner, owner of a bar in upstate New York. Along with her assistant, she often killed customers in the meat cutting room in order to rob them. A note in the criminal complaint says, if she finds out you have cash on you, you're dead. In the photo on the right, this lady met men on the street, flirted with them and invited them to her house for tea. She served wine or arsenic tea to the guests. She would steal from the victims and sell the loot to fences, even down to the shoelaces. Pictured left, Smith is the senior member of the Mafia's rank and file. A note in the criminal case file says, distinguished by his powers of suggestion, cunning and ruthlessness towards the enemies of the Mafia, very good at shooting. In the photo on the right, a man in short pants, the accountant of the Chicago Mafia. In prison under pressure from the police repented, but immediately after was found hanged by his cellmate. On his chest was scratched on the inscription, I have said everything and forever shut up. Pictured left, the Farland brothers' most dangerous gang. They were involved in highway robberies and robberies in the far reaches of the state. The man in the middle is the leader of the gang, known as Bloody Fletcher. His crew was responsible for a huge number of contract killings and kidnappings for ransom. The gang was not squeamish about stealing the children of high-ranking officials and major police officials. A note in the criminal case file says, do not imprison together, only in singles, very dangerous and violent, can kill fellow inmates in an argument. Prostitute thieves. Sedated clients with alcohol, emptied their pockets. Worked for the Mafia, handing over the most valuable and talkative clients to the criminals. On the left, a fence, working for the Mafia. On the right, Mr. Fellini, first killed his first wife, served time in prison. Then he remarried and killed the second wife. The author of the video does not support any violence and crime, and reminds that crime is a one-way road that leads to grief in the families of the perpetrators and the families of their victims, and will always lead to prison. Do not commit crimes, and take care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you for watching the video.